All right, what's going on, everybody? My name is Shawn Vaughn, and this is Champions Material. As always, glad to be here. Now, joining me today, this man was the first guest ever on Champions Material back in season one, and he's back for season two. Craig Darrow, get on in here, brother. Man, we got
what's going on?
What's good, man?
It's good to be back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Like
the tone setter, man. The return of the tone setter.
I tell you, I appreciate that intro. It was nice. It was I know I set the standard for the most part. I felt like being the first out. Man.
Come on,
but
man.
Definitely, it was a good time last time. Hopefully, we could just have as good of a conversation this time. Hopefully, I know we're switching it up a little bit.
Yeah. So let's let the people know what's going on, man. So season one, myself, Craig Darrow, we touched on the topic that we called the replayables. And here was the key to that. We were talking about gaming, and we were defining, like, specifically, what is it about certain games that make them replayable? What is it about certain games that you come back to, months from after the fact, years after the fact, even if you've played through them, once, twice, multiple times. There are good games that you play, you're like, all right, cool, you put them down. And then there's just those handful of games that really stick to you. So me and Craig chopped it up about that back in season one. And for season two, we're going to stay with that theme, but we're going to take you in a different lane. And now we're talking about movies. All right. So look, I think myself, definitely I enjoy a good movie every now and then whenever I have time. I know you do. So I wanted to have you back. And here's the thing, man. Let's just get right to it. In season one, you let the people know about what makes a game replayable to you. Mm-hmm. Let them know about what makes a movie replayable. What is it about certain movies that you'll come back to?
I got you. Honestly, it's just something that can really keep my interest for the most part. I mean, there's been movies that I've watched over and over and over again. I don't know them verbatim. I'm not to that extent, but it's just an enjoyable experience for the most part. You also have certain movies that have become literally a part of culture, right?
Yeah.
Like during holidays, there's certain movies that you watch religiously every single year. Things like that, or when you're going through the channels, and that movie might be on, so you stop by and just leave it on, even if it's just background noise.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just one of those movies that are kind of set themselves aside to be different, in my opinion, than most other movies. Because a lot of movies, especially like action movies, a lot of them are pretty much the same type of setup throughout the whole movie. Yeah, just a different, different actors or different location, but it's all the same premise for the most part. Just like horror movies, like people, why don't you really get scared? Because like when you watch enough horror movies, a lot of it's just predictable at that point. You already know when things are going to happen, right. But they're still enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much what makes something really replayable. It's something that you may have grown up with, something that is just could be your favorite. Things like that. So that's to me what honestly replayable will be for a movie.
Absolutely, man. And I would say this for me. It's one thing that I always define as far as a movie that I can go back and replay or rewatch, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
And it's this. If I decided to just turn my brain off and just unplug, and I have set aside time to just lock in and just check out the movie from start to finish and still get a great experience from it, regardless of the fact that I may have seen it, 2, 3, 4, multiple times, and I can still get, what I need to get from it to do what it needs to do. Or say if I'm busy, like you said, background noise. If I can have it play in the background and and I can jump in whenever and I can catch a scene and I can just pick up right where I left off, right? So even if I don't necessarily have time to watch all of it, like for example, Friday, you know what I mean?
It doesn't matter. You've seen it enough times. You already know what happens in those gaps.
Absolutely. When the ice cream truck, pull up.
And you know those cues, right? Exactly when something's about to happen that you enjoyed from that movie. Say, it catches your interest real quick.
Absolutely. So whether I have time to dive in and catch all of it, and I can still get something from it, like for example, Coming to America, just dropped. So I plan on trying to, catch that. Somebody shoot me their Prime account. Just kidding, not kidding. You know what I mean? It's, as soon as I can. But I went back and caught, Coming to America. And again, that movie's over 30 years old.
I'm just saying. I just
No, I
heard.
know.
It's see, you gotta be careful with those movies.
No. But since you went there,
You gotta be careful because you gotta look at like when you have that big of a gap, right? Look at Bad Boys 3.
okay.
Was Bad Boys 3 great?
No,
I know it's subjective, but regardless.
No, you know what? Here's the thing. It was fine. I had to, and this is what I was about to get to. Coming to America, I've had two. It's been two camps that I've been hearing so far. People who can't help but go back to the original, which is one of the all-time classics, Craig. And if you're gonna compare it to that, it's not that.
But that's
good.
everything, though, right? When we were talking about video games last time, everything is always going to get compared to the original because if it doesn't hit the same way, you know, like movies, like you talk about another big gap, Incredibles 2 to Incredibles, huge gap. More people obviously enjoy the first one,
right?
But same thing like we were just talking about Coming to America. What was that other one that I just named? That was
Bad Boys.
Bad Boys. Yeah, these big gaps. It's not like it's a bad movie. It's just like, you look, that movie kind of ran its course for the most part, and they tried to revitalize it. Okay, in my opinion, kind of like when they remaster video games. Like, you can't remaster a movie per se.
Yeah.
So they're trying to bring it back, and honestly, it feels like a lot of production companies are just running out of ideas. You know, so we're getting a lot of like, what do we do? Well, let's bring this back to look at Disney, right? Disney did a real life version of Jungle Book. They did it for Lion King. Now they're doing band. They're just going. Everyone's going. Exactly. They're just everyone's going back to what these classic heavy hitters were, and then redoing it. But at some point, obviously they protect like the real vintage, like the legendary films. Like, how would you feel, right, if they redid it like a Scarface or a Godfather, right? You can't do it, right? Because you can't without Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. You can't have it without those exact players, which is exactly what we're going to talk about. Right. But all in all, I mean, I'm sorry to take you away from your Coming to America, but
look, man, now you got me not wanting to watch that shit. Look,
I mean, Eddie Murphy was great back in the day. Don't get me wrong.
Don't you do it. Are you saying Eddie ain't got it no more?
It's been a while since I've seen Eddie in anything.
But that's by choice. And also, how can Eddie? Let's keep it real. Like, we digression from Replayables and these movies. Yeah, Eddie Murphy wrote. Okay. I still find
it's one of the greatest standards of all time.
I would put it in my top 4 all time,
easily.
But in 2020, 2021, not like in this day and age, right? Yeah, you play certain aspects of Raw. You know what I mean? Some of the stuff that he talks about as far as individuals who identify themselves as gay, like some of the
times change, right?
Right.
There's a lot of movies. And
how can Eddie became Eddie at a time where he could go to certain places that he can't go now? So is it that Eddie is not necessarily funny anymore, or is it harder now than it was when he came up and really broke to do comedy at a level? Because let's keep it 100. Dave Chappelle, to me, and you can fact check me if I'm wrong, Dave Chappelle currently today in this climate is the only top line comedian that can still operate the way he came in.
I agree.
And it works. Everybody else getting canceled.
No, and you're right.
So is Eddie looking at that, and is Eddie saying, I'm not?
Well, you have to adapt with the times, and especially nowadays with cancel culture just literally like taking everything away almost. Yeah. I get there's a lot of legit reasons for certain things, but a lot of those jokes wouldn't stand in today's ground, right? Eddie Murphy, he hasn't continuously done stand-up like Chappelle has to kind of keep up, because that's the thing, you got to stay in it. Right?
I think they call it working out. Like, you got to work out in the clubs to be
just like athletes, right? NBA isn't what it used to be 20 years ago versus what it is today. So if you're continuously working at it and changing your game to better fit, you're going to be more successful. Right. Same thing with acting or being a comedian in general. So, that's why I think, Kevin Hart and Dave Chappelle are still relevant to today, because they remain consistent within the public eye. But they also don't really go too far over the line. Right. So I know like Dave Chappelle had that whole, in his last stand-up, which was great, but with the whole, that LGBTQ plus, I don't know how to let it say. Sorry, excuse my ignorance, but
don't come for us.
No, it was a good bit, and it wasn't to tarnish him or anything. So he did a good job with it, But Eddie, you're right, Raw back in the day,
can't quite see him.
But also his movies in general. When you look back and they were Beverly Hills Cop, awesome. Even we want to go even more family friendly, like Doctor Dolittle, and things like that. So
what is your favorite Eddie movie? If I had to put you to it, and I said you could only choose one, what you going with?
I don't know. Like Coming to America is probably the one I probably watch the most often,
Mm.
the original one. But that cast was also great with Arsenio Hall, and everybody that was in it. It was well put together. But my personal favorite is Trading Places.
Ooh,
With Dan Aykroyd.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I figured it was a good premise. You for back in the given like my favorite legendary comedian turned actor is still Richard Pryor. Like I love his movies back in the day for when he was with Gene Wilder and Stir Crazy, and a bunch of other movies. But that would probably be my personal favorite Eddie movie. I know it's different than what most people would say,
Right,
but it's just one of those. It's like if it's on, I'm probably gonna watch it.
I'm listening to you and I'm sitting here thinking at the same time because we ain't talked about this before we hopped on.
We did it because this went a whole different direction.
You know what? Fuck it. It's what it is. If you put me to it, it would be between Harlem Nights and Boomerang, and
I was going to say Boomerang.
I'm probably going to take Boomerang. I think Boomerang has aged.
It has
better than Harlem Nights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would probably go Boomerang. But before we keep it moving, and we're sticking with Eddie just for a minute, you talked about Coming to America, and you're like, you've heard, from people, and I've heard, haven't seen it, have you?
No.
I haven't seen it. Now, and it's two camps. It's you know what I mean, the people that I've talked to that liked it, they were able to shut their brain off and just say, I'm going to watch this as if Coming to America did not exist, or I'm going to watch it and not compare it directly to the all-time classic, the original. And they're saying it's pretty good. Now, there's other individuals I've been talking to that's along the lines of what you're talking about, where you're like, look, it's it's great to revisit some of the old jokes and the old, you know what I mean, cameos and all of that, but it's not as good as yet. Is it impossible that if you're going to do a direct sequel, especially when it's so influenced by an original, a previous movie, in your mind, is it impossible to say, look, shut your brain off or don't think about the original, just look at the sequel on its own? Like, can you look at Terminator 2 and not think about Terminator?
I think no matter what you have, everything doesn't matter, whether it's a music artist, an actor, a movie, game.
Right.
Everything's always going to get compared to the original because that's the first impression, right? Just like if you got a job, right, and your first day there, that's the first impression. And then if you strayed away from that, whether it be good or bad, that will change people's perception of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's honestly what it really comes down to is just, for me at least, it's hard to really just be like, look, this is what the original was like versus what the new one. And sometimes it feels like they kind of stretch for jokes instead of it just being more natural.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this was a big hit in the first movie. Let's try to bring it back, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And they try to fit it in there however they can. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
But I haven't watched it yet. I might watch it tonight. I don't know. But I haven't. So my opinion doesn't really matter. But all in all, like I said, from what I've read and heard, is just simply, it's not holding up to what the original was. And most things won't. I get that.
And I kind of held off because I wanted to separate. I wanted to try to separate the original before going into the second one, and then I turned around and watched the original, and it's still funny as hell.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It still aged well. It's funny because I came in and before I rewound it and caught the entirety of the original Coming to America. I came in on the bathroom scene. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Be careful, will spill your beverages, and shit's still funny. You know what I mean? Over 30 years later, so I'm gonna try to shut my brain off. But I think you're right. I gotta concede it to you. Like it's impossible to watch this one and not think of the original. But I'm gonna try to go. I'm gonna try to go back with an open mind.
Exactly.
And we'll see what happens, man. But
I mean, regardless, Eddie Murphy, they still deserve the support, and like, hey, these are people that put in their effort. They're making the attempt. I'm all for Shawn.
And most of the original cast, you know what I'm saying, is back, with a few exceptions, man. So if nothing else, it's just be good to see everybody, right? Now, let me do this.
Yep.
You just defined what makes a movie replayable to you. Let the people know, man. Give them a couple examples of movies that you're like, I don't care if I saw it when I was a kid. I don't care if I saw it in the '90s.
So this is completely subjective, obviously. So these are my own personal,
Right.
you know, and I get, and these are, but uh, my favorite movie of all time is, doesn't matter. I'll always watch it if it's just on TV or if it's whatever. I'll just always turn it on.
Your favorite movie of all time? All right. Okay, Charlie, let the people know, man.
It's Snatch. Have you ever heard of Snatch?
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt is in it.
Heard about it.
Phenomenally written, everything.
Okay.
Jason Statham's in it, a young Jason Statham. The movie came out in the late '90s, but it's a really unique movie. The way it's written is very different. You know, it's one of those where you really got to pay.
So for somebody who hasn't seen it yet,
yeah,
without like completely just spoiling it, you know, start to finish, just a general synopsis of what's your all-time favorite movie, Snatch, is all about.
It's hard to really explain.
Yeah.
But you know, it's got a little bit of everything. Where it's all centered around boxing. And
you know who I'm talking to.
It's all centered around
like, talking to.
And you know, these mobsters, they make their money from rigging these fights and things like that. So they try to find some random person to try to fight their main pride and joy. What's his name? Gorgeous George is the name of their boxer.
Famous wrestler for my wrestling fans out
there. But yeah, so they try to so that's their main boxer. So they're trying to find somebody random. So they go to this trailer park, and I think they're called Pikeys. That's where Brad Pitt comes into play.
Okay.
And Brad Pitt is the person that they recruit to try to fight this one guy. You know, they want to fix the fight.
Right.
So the first person that they had him fight, you know, they put all their money down or whatever. Brad Pitt just walked right up and knocked him out in one hit. And they weren't expecting. So then, you know, they got all upset about it. They go, well, money back, things like that. So then it goes on, you know, things like that. But anyway, in the end, you know, I want to spoil out the end where, you know, then there's a final fight where they try to, you know, do it again with Brad Pitt and their other fighter, you know, and he's required to take a fall and things like that. And they do certain things to make sure that he understands they're serious. It's just a well put together movie. That, you know, it is unlike anything else that I've really watched, and that's why I think I really enjoy it. And yeah, it was just really enjoyable. Snatch, yeah.
And you had to know. I mean, you know this, so you had to know as soon as you said it centers around, you know, boxing and you know, fights and, you know, rigging fights and all of that. Yeah. You had me. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely have to check that out and add that to my rotation.
Yeah. I know they made a TV show afterwards, but I never watched the TV show. But definitely the original, the movie's pretty good.
Snatch.
Okay. Yeah, and it's just like how it, and that's just like one movie where it's just different. You know, and
is that the biggest appeal to you, that it's different? That it just has a different.
Just also the way they set up.
Okay.
You know, like I said, the whole plot, you know, where they make you think they're going one way, this way, that way. You know, it's just all over.
So let me ask you.
But it all comes together in the end.
Okay. And so you talked about how the plot. So ironically, we was gonna touch on this a little bit later, but I'm gonna go ahead and tap into it now for a minute. Yeah. Sometimes your favorite movies can be based on the performances as far as the actors and actresses that are in it. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, some of your favorite movies can be based on just the movie itself, the setup, the plot. Yep. Where does Snatch land for you? Does it is it lean, you know, one way, the other way? Does it?
I wouldn't say like the performances are the greatest. You know, just because remember, like this is in the not like too early in Brad Pitt's years, but it's still early in his acting career. It's the late '90s, you know. Right. Same thing with Jason Statham, it's late '90s. So a lot of these big name actors, and there's other people in it, I just can't think of their names. Right. But yeah, I mean the quality of the casting worked out perfectly. Like everybody was properly casted. It worked out.
In the chemistry,
yeah,
that's important.
You know, and I know we talked about this briefly earlier. Whereas, you know, everybody fit their parts perfectly. Whereas if you switch somebody out, you know, it wouldn't be the same movie. So definitely unique in that sense. But yeah, that's my personal like all time. That's my one like go-to movie that I just love. But at the same time, I'm like,
and you can watch it anytime, every time, either all the way through, or you can watch it like I was mentioning earlier, where you just, if you happen to have it on and you see it on, and you just pop in at any moment and just, you know, go from that scene and it still grabs you. Yep. So either way.
Yep. Yeah.
You know what? Since you went there,
I can't think of the director's name, and I can't for some reason. I know it. It's just I can't think of his name. But all of his movies are just amazing. Like because he's the same director that did Smoking Aces. He did
okay.
oh my gosh, Rock and Roll Roller. Um, he's done a bunch.
So he's definitely in that action,
Yeah,
type.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. For the most part,
let's
yeah.
just get down on the action flicks. Okay.
Dude used to be married to Madonna. What was his name? All right, I'm gonna think of it
Uh,
randomly. It's gonna come out, so be ready.
okay.
But anyway, but no, that's like one of my personal ones. As far as it's like anytime.
Yeah, yeah.
Aside from that one, uh, it, there's a few other ones. Obviously you have ones that are for family, things like that.
Right.
That's why like every year I think like Home Alone 2 is like always like a staple.
Well, okay, so two. That's interesting.
2 I enjoyed more than 1. The 1 is still a classic.
Controversial
And
statement,
the
man.
other 8 they made afterwards don't count. But
come on, man.
1 and 2 were really great movies. And
Okay.
they were different, unique. I mean, shoot, Macaulay Culkin made most of his career from those two. I mean, he had other
he had
hits.
The Good Son. He had some other
The Good
stuff going
Son,
on.
yeah. My Girl,
he's
yeah.
in that joint.
I mean, most of us, if not everybody, have seen My Girl.
Right.
The Good Son was creepy and weird, but good.
Right.
But yeah, those are just ones that when it comes on TV, people usually just straight to it. Doesn't matter, who you are or what your likes or dislikes are. It's just one of those things that are part of culture.
And that's the thing. I think you touched on it. It was a good point that you can ask 5 different people, okay, what makes a movie replayable, right?
Yep.
And you can get 5 different responses. You can ask, obviously it's a ton of movies that good movies that have been made throughout the year. So if you ask people what their favorite movies is and why, you're going to get 5 or multiple different answers.
Yep.
And since you went there, and I didn't expect you to go directly to your all time. But since you did,
that's the one that was on my head. I mean, I had to get that one out because that's just it never anybody asked me what's your favorite movie. It's easy.
That's the first one that comes.
That's the first one that comes to my mind.
And it's interesting too because, like I said, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. Yeah. But now I'm definitely definitely tap in and check that out. For me, and you may not have heard of this one. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. My favorite movie of all time, and this movie is now, we're in 2021, so it's officially going to be 26 years old this year. It's called The Usual Suspects.
That's with Kevin Costner, right?
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey. I'm thinking of something different. What am I thinking of now? All right, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm thinking of The Untouchables. That's what I'm thinking of. Untouchables, great movie with Shawn Connery and But anyway,
Robert De Niro, I think, was in that joint Untouchables, if I'm not.
But anyway, yeah, okay. Usual Suspects.
Usual Suspects. So it's got Kevin Spacey. He's got Chaz Pimentel. You might know him from Bronx Tale. He was the gangster Sonny in Bronx Tale.
Okay.
It's also got Stephen Baldwin when his head was on straight before he just completely went before he went left. Benicio del Toro was in that joint. Gabrielle Breen. It's the movie. I think it's probably most famous for people who are familiar with it. Verbal Kent, this entire time, he's getting interrogated about this big not robbery, but this big explosion that took place amongst gangsters.
I'm fairly certain I've seen it.
You have,
but
and it's the ending.
It's
the ending that grabs everybody because they realize he was the bad guy. So
gotcha.
He literally spent the entire movie, meaning Kevin Spacey as Verbal Kent, being interrogated by Chaz Pimentel's character, and he's laying out this entire elaborate story about how these guys were rounded up and how they had to do all these jobs for this mysterious Kaiser Soze, who was this like boss of bosses that no one knew. I think the line that people will probably take most from it is from Verbal Kent. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. That's where that's the movie that line comes from.
Okay.
And at the end, and spoiler alert, you've had over 20 years to see it, so spoiler alert, get over it.
I don't like the spoiler. I gotta get people.
It's what it is, right? So towards the end, you find out that he was the bad guy all the time, and he was pulling the strings about this.
I remember that part. I remember that.
Absolutely. He walks out of the police station and literally straightens up, and you realize at the very end, he was the guy that the whole movie was built around chasing. Brilliant performance. Kevin Spacey gets and obviously now, unfortunately, we know he's been in some controversial moments. So when you think about him now, it's different. But we're talking back then in the '90s. One of the great actors got an Oscar for it, supporting Oscar. And it's just my favorite movie because it's so again, I talked about this earlier. Sometimes a movie can be great to you because of the plot. Sometimes a movie can be great to you because of the actors and actresses that are in it, and then also just the chemistry and how it's presented to you.
Yeah.
To me, that movie had everything.
Yep.
Plot, it was well casted. And we're going to do this a little bit later on with some of our favorite movies. And I think you already kind of touched on it with the actors in Snatch. It's not only the casting of each character, but how they all fit into the plot, the story, and the direction of what the movie is supposed to be for you. And this movie to me was perfect from start to finish. There are some people who are definitely more like, if you're into action movies, it's like, okay, get on with it. I want to know what's going on. If you're the type of person that kind of wants to know what's happening as the movie's going on, this ain't for you. Usual Suspects, this ain't for you. One of the things that I always value in movies is I don't want to know everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
You're going to keep me more engaged based on the fact that I'm trying to figure things out throughout. There's always, so when we were talking about earlier, like some of the many things that define the movie as being replayable, for me, that's one of them.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's going to be hard to keep my attention if I know immediately from the beginning, okay, that's the bad guy. Or, okay, this is going to happen throughout, and we're just going to watch it, play out for the next hour and a half, 2 hours plus, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But a movie where I'm on my toes and I'm kind of figuring, I'm either figuring out or I'm coming up with, my ideas of what's going on and where it's leading next.
Yep.
Versus what the movie gives me. If the movie does it right, that's where you're going to grab me. That's what's going to be something replayable. A situation where I can watch it multiple times, said movie multiple times, and still get something different from it.
You watch Tenet from last year?
Oh, John David Denzel's son. How was it?
Confusing. I still to this, I don't know what the hell's going on, but it's confusing.
That's
exactly what I'm getting.
Confusing. Okay, I've watched it a ton of times and I still don't know what the hell's going on. Confusing.
Exactly.
What type of confusing is it for you, man?
It's just, I mean, you got to watch it, man.
Okay.
I'm sure many people have watched it, where it's simply, where
I just saw him in.
There's moments in the movie where time's moving forward, it's moving backwards.
Does it kind of give you like Inception vibes?
It reminded me of a lot of Inception.
Yeah.
Where you got to really pay attention to the details. Right. But yeah, I was just like, I don't know are they going forward in time? Are they going backward? I was like, I don't know what's going on.
So you're dropping some dimes on me, man. I got to check. So Snatch, Tenet, and if it's coming from you,
but I like Baby Denzel. Baby Denzel is he'll always be that.
I just saw.
I love Ballers. So Ballers is a phenomenal show. That's where he really got his launch.
Yeah.
And big kudos to him because in my opinion, like he's been doing it all without his dad. Like his dad is obviously a big name. And he did it all on his own. He's got to where he's
There's no name drop vibe to him. Like from the very beginning, you talked about it in Ballers. I just saw him, partner man. We just sat and we watched this movie on Netflix with him and Zendaya, Malcolm and Marie.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it just came out. It really just kind of speaks to the type of things that goes on, behind closed doors within a relationship and how you got to, fight through stuff and you got to be real. Anyway, so he showed one of the things that I always appreciate in anything, whether you're a musician, whether you're an actor, whatever, is versatility.
Okay.
Are you a one-trick pony where you're really great at one thing? Okay, that's cool. That can fine.
Well, there are a lot of actors and actresses that are just typecast, right? That they are always in the exact like Jason Statham, right? I named him from 10.
Yeah.
Just action, right? Vin Diesel's only going to be action. That's not
great at it, but that's just what they
just like The Rock,
do.
All action, right? They can't do anything else. I mean, they've tried comedy; it's just horrible. But but yeah, it's versatility. Very few people have that ability.
You know what? If I were to put you on the spot, and I said, okay, for you, when you talk about your favorite actor or actress, and if you're talking about from the standpoint of versatility, you've seen them kill it in multiple different roles, multiple different ways, and they get it done for you.
That's easy. I'm gonna go really white on you. Tom Hanks. You can't know he's untouchable. Like, I mean, yes, he can be touched, but like when you look at his roles of of everything he's done from like Castaway all the way into earlier with Big. What's the name of the dog? It's not Turner and Hooch. It's the other dog. But anyway, when he had the dog, and that was back in the 80s. But yeah, like that's
Forrest Gump. He can do Philadelphia, which was a serious role.
Yeah, so he used to do comedies, and then he got really into dramas. But he can really sell you on that. Like, that's his role. That's his part. You know, where you just kind of forget like he's Tom Hanks and he's the captain of the ship. Things like that. So he's a really good one. He's not one of my favorites, but he's, as far as what you were mentioning, I personally feel like he's just like,
I've maintained, and mind you, I was going to get to this movie. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and get into it now, and then I'll, piggyback off of what you're saying.
yeah.
We were talking about this just before we came on. 20th anniversary training day.
Okay.
So Better Ways out on Netflix right now. So anybody that's listening that subscribes to
the top 10
Netflix
also, I think.
stays in the top 10. It'll go away for a while. It'll come back and it'll stay in the top 10 for a reason. It's currently on Netflix. So definitely, if you want to take a trip down memory lane, a good trip, mind you.
You know what I remember from that?
Tap in.
That was like 20 years ago. So I was a teenager. You know what I remember?
Talking about Eva.
That's all I remember. Is that there's like 2 seconds of her.
Man, shout out to Mendez, boy.
Being a teenager back then.
Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame in her own right. But
anyway,
no,
it's not proverbial. I'm just saying, as a teenager, 20 years ago version of me.
I was like,
that's how it was. Okay, that's what I remember.
She's one of the all-time greats.
But that was
just
also who what's the name of the dude that was right across from him?
Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke, thank you.
I'm highly underrated. I think he's going to be one of those actors that, before sunset, after sunset, he's I think what was it?
He's good at getting his ass beat though. Like he gets this shit beat out in every movie. Training Day got the shit beat out. Assault on Precinct 13 got the shit beat out. Like he plays like this good guy, but then shit beat out in every movie.
He's underrated. And here's the thing, man. It was hard, and I was watching that movie. And here's the thing: we talked about when we got on this, when we were doing the gaming aspect of Replayables. Yeah. We talked about one of the big aspects of does the game age well? Training Day, 20 years old, ages extremely well. I actually sat and watched it from start to finish, knowing that I've watched that movie a dozen times, if not more. And I watched it again from start to finish. The Antoine Fuqua is the director. Shout out to him. Probably the best movie he's ever done. I know he's done other movies with Denzel. The scene that it felt like, right? We were talking about this too, where here's the reality. I talked about Usual Suspects being my all-time favorite movie because it gave me everything.
Yeah,
I love the plot. I love the actors and the actresses that was in it. I love the pacing.
Yeah.
I love how it kept me on my toes throughout. Yeah. And then the ending was probably one of the best endings I've ever seen on film ever. Training Day, let's keep it real. You take Denzel Washington out of there and you put a Will Smith. You put a Samuel L. Jackson.
Baby Denzel.
John David.
I think he can.
He could, but
he has the same mannerisms. He talks and moves just like his dad. So
Denzel,
but I get what you're saying.
It's as realistic as the scene is and the vibe of that movie. If you take a look at the plot and everything that takes place from start to finish, everything with Roger, the whole nine. It's that movie. The plot is not great, but great performances carries that movie, and Denzel's at the top of that list. That's when he finally got his Oscar. Should have had one for He Got Game, in my opinion. Definitely should have had one for Malcolm X, in my opinion. I know I think he got a supporting actor for Glory, with Morgan Freeman, right? Yeah. But there was a couple times he was passed over for an Oscar, and you can tell, like, on Training Day, from start to finish, he was like, I'm getting this motherfucker. Like there's no one else that's going to.
He put you 150%.
And it's still my favorite performance. And I would say
people still quote that movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely, man. So, all that jelly, no toast. All right. Even but here's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's still my favorite. It's my favorite performance, not my best. And we'll get to that a little bit later as far as like the best performances we've seen. But it's my favorite performance from any that I've ever seen from any actor or actress, because Lonzo's a bad guy. Yeah, he did some horrible shit. But guess what? I was rooting for him the entire time. Up until the very end when, he didn't get the money. He was just trying to get up out of Dodge, came to that stop. Russians came, put him down. And for all the shit that he did, he was so charismatic throughout that I hated that they took him out.
Well, throughout the movie, you learn that he's mostly just looking out for himself because he got into debt with the Russians, obviously, and that was the whole base of the movie is him getting the money to pay them back.
And whoever he had to step on along the way.
Exactly.
So he was doing horrible shit, and I was still rooting for him. Wow. And you know what? The old Chris Rock line is my favorite line from any comedy special I've ever seen. I'm not saying he should have did it, but I understand. Like, and then also just the fact that he was so charismatic that, and we know people like this in real life, where it's like, okay, man, I know, my guy over there, I know he can kind of go left every now and then, but I still pull for him, I still root for him. I know old girl, but I still, certain people just have that kind of vibe to them, and Denzel took that vibe to the max throughout.
Yep.
Go back to another example for me would be Neil in Heat with Al Pacino. Bad guy throughout the entire, another probably all-time classic. Bad guy throughout.
The movie's just stupid long, but it's a good movie.
That's okay, motherfucker.
I think we had this conversation. Like, well, it's a movie that goes over 2 hours. Like, you may or may not catch it to the end. Like, I might give up.
She said you might come back to
it's too much of a commitment.
Neil and Heat. And then I was talking about this on a recent podcast I did with the Ice Enigma, T Enigma. Shout out to Enigmas Unchained. Check them out. Tupac and Juice.
Yep.
Those performances, there's one common thing. They're all, frankly, if you keep it in 1,000, they're all bad guys. But they gave such great performances and they were so charismatic throughout that you can actually root for them, knowing in the back of your mind.
That's where I don't think a lot of people notice is like whoever plays the antagonist in a lot of these movies.
Yeah.
If you hate that person or they're getting on your nerves through the movie and you're like, you just want this person to die or whatever, you're doing a pretty fucking good job at acting. Like, there's a lot of villains that are in these movies where they just sell it so well where people just hate them as an individual at that point. And so it's just a dude acting. Like, you forget all about that. It's just like, look, I'm ready for this person to just be written out the movie,
Yeah.
Like, those are some of the best performances that you probably see. You don't even
Wesley Snipes, Brian, New Jack City. I can go on and on. There's some villains where you just, they don't. You're rooting for them to be taken down the entire time.
Yep.
In certain movies, right? And then there are villains where in the end they shouldn't win.
Yep.
But you want them to. And then you're sitting there asking yourself, like, what the fuck is going on with me that I'm sitting here rooting for this motherfucker? Like, Training Day, Alonzo, like, he literally used his son as a shield.
Yep.
Toward the end when he was trying to get up out the paint, and I'm still rooting for him despite shit like that, right? Yeah. Despite when he set up Hoyt at the damn poker table with Smiley and the Mexicans, knowing that they was gonna take him out. And he's like, I gotta hit the head, and he steps out.
Yep.
And these motherfuckers had him in the tub, and if not for finding the wallet that had one of the guys' cousins, because remember earlier in the movie he stopped her, the teenage girl, from getting jumped by the crackheads. If not for that, they're gonna take him out in the tub. And even after that, still rooting for Denzel. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't know, but I'm not gonna apologize for it. It's what it is. That's what great performances do. So sometimes great movies are not necessarily always great movies as far as if you take everything into account, plot and pacing and for you, length of movie. But sometimes performances can make a movie great. And for me, Denzel, Alonzo, Training Day is my favorite performance. And it was so amazing to me that it made that movie great, even if that movie from a plot standpoint wasn't necessarily the best. So Usual Suspects, all of it made that movie great. Okay. Training Day, Denzel, in my opinion, and Ethan Hawke, and Roger. I forget the guy that plays Roger. He's been in some other movies as well. His name eludes me, but
I'm horrible with names. So
right, but great performances made that movie great to me.
Yep.
Right. So let me kick this out to you, because you talked about like Tom Hanks and how his performances and his versatility.
Well, he's like the most consistent, as far as performance for a lot of the movies he's done. Right. Okay. That's why like most of his.
So he's your go-to guy.
Right? It depends on the movie. Okay. I'm not going to put him in an action movie.
Okay, so
that's his only limitation.
That's where I was going, and you took the words right out of my mouth.
Like Denzel now mostly does action for the most part, even in his elder years, because the man's like easily in his 60s. I don't want to say, but he's still doing it. Him and Bruce Willis, they're all doing those action stuff somehow. But you put Denzel in a comedy, you're not gonna really think twice about it. Maybe you've seen him in dramas, and things like that. Fallen was a great movie.
Yeah.
Creepy and weird, but it was a good movie. But yeah, though, like that, I think almost every actor has one particular genre where they just can't fit.
Can't quite. Yeah.
Like I've been sitting here trying to brainstorm, thinking somebody that can kind of do it all.
The closest, ironically, and I brought him up a little bit earlier, maybe Will Smith. Not
He's done action.
he
can do drama.
Yeah, he can do comedy.
He can do comedy.
He may be the only one, and I
He's
don't
done romantic comedy.
exactly.
Whatchamacallit, Evan Mendes and whatchamacallit, Hitch. It's the movie. I'm getting better with names now.
There you go. Okay.
But you know, he could. I mean, he's one of the biggest actors
So,
of all time.
and when I'm talking, so you know what? Let me transition to this. It's interesting when we talk about. So, give me just a couple examples off the dome, if you can.
Okay.
Of movies where you really locked into great, the performances from the actor or the actress within the movie. I'll give you an example to kick this off. My favorite actress of all time, Angela Bassett. What's love got to do with it?
Okay. I'll give you Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett. And here's what I'm going with the question. Could you take her out and could you put anybody else in their prime in that role and you would say, I think that would be a better movie because that person played Tina Turner and not Angela Bassett.
It's valid. No, you're right.
Is there anybody else that you would go, okay, take Angela out, put this person in, and that's probably an even better movie?
No, you're right.
That to me.
But she was perfectly cast for it, you know?
But that's the thing, like,
just when they
or that was just one example, but just in general, like I think that there are certain actresses, I would say, and we'll take it to the MCU for a minute. Scarlett Johansson, you know what I mean, Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of another actress that I would say, okay, maybe.
Didn't she get her own movie? Did it ever come out?
Man, who knows? It's supposed to come out this year and came out this year. They just finished up WandaVision. I'm still confused. I'm confused, not confused, whatever. I'm not even going down that rabbit hole right now.
That's fine. I can't
but
say
they get ready to start Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then they got Doctor Strange, which is a big takeaway I got from WandaVision, and then I know the Black. It's slated to come out this year. We'll see how it plays out. But my core point was, take out Scarlett, and would you put anybody else in that role and go, okay, I think that this would be a better movie, based on the fact that this person is in Scarlett's time. That to me is there's a lot of things on my list that I, take to define like, okay, who's a great actor or great actress? Versatility, and if you take said person out and put said person in, it's a better movie. And if you're sitting there going, shit, I don't have anybody I can think of. That's one of the main things I would look at and go, okay.
She's easy.
Who would you? Okay.
You could easily put Charlize Theron in there. If you look at some of her action roles, like that last movie, what was it called? The Old Guard or something like that. That was on Netflix.
Okay.
She can move just as swiftly, and she's a much bigger name.
Whoa!
I must say, she's a much bigger name.
Let's have a little debate here. You saying that Charlize Theron is a bigger name
than Scarlett Johansson? Okay.
You can't just leave dead air on that one.
All day.
Explain yourself, Chris.
Because she's been in the game a lot longer. She has a much better tenure. And do
you think she's a better actress overall?
Yeah.
Got an Oscar. Yeah.
No, she'll be. Yeah. She'll be. Scarlett Johansson married somebody from SNL. That says a lot. No, I'm joking. Where's your man? Happy for them. She's very happy. But somebody like that. I mean, you can even look at like Angelina Jolie from back in the day. She used to do a lot of action movies. She did Salt. Salt was a solid movie. But there again, they're good and they can do those action type of moves just like she did. But the whole part of that is how well would they mesh with the rest of that cast in the Avengers. Now, you know me, I've never seen any of the movies. I don't care to, no offense. But still, regardless, I can't imagine them being with, any of them other guys. Right. They were all, Chris Hemsworth, Chris something.
Chris Evans.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, again, and I was going to touch on him real quick before I, kept it moving and pushed it back to you. I think as far as the actors and actresses that they chose to play the characters in the MCU, with the exception of Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, I would say that, for the most part, maybe Mark Ruffalo as Hulk. Outside of those two, I can't think of. There's no other glaring examples to me. When you talk about this crazy run that they've been on, and they're about to transition into the next phase of these MCU movies, where from a casting standpoint, I think they nailed everyone relative to the role that they played in MCU.
No, it worked out well.
So shout out to them. I think that's one of the reasons. Again, and
well, Disney knew that they had to do it right. I mean, superhero movies were like coming up, right, and people were getting a lot more critical. Especially people that read the comic books and stuff like that. And Disney knew that when they bought out the rights to Marvel, you only have one chance, right? You can't keep throwing balls. You got to get strikes in there from time to time. You got to make it a hit.
And say what you want about Robert Downey. And I certainly had my reservations, way back when before the original Iron Man dropped and I saw it. That was a head scratcher for me because shit that he had done previous to that, nothing told me that that guy can step into that role and be Iron Man. And then, you know what, he nailed it. And it set the tone for the rest of the MCU. But one of the things I wanted to kick off pass back to you. I talked about, some of my favorite performances that I've seen. And again, it can be any type of genre. For me, rom-com, Nia Long and Love Jones. One of my favorite, movies of all time for a completely different reason because her chemistry with Lorenz Tate in that movie, dope movie, great pacing. It really talked about all different aspects of relationship, great supporting cast, Isaiah Washington, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that the chemistry that they had and the authenticity, you sometimes forgot that there was a camera there. You felt like you was right there watching two people go through all aspects of, shit that goes on within a relationship. So great performance. Nia Long, Love Jones. I can go on and on. I talked about Tupac and Juice. I talked about Robert De Niro and Heat. Yeah. I'm going to, for right now, not best, I'm going to ask you, what are some of your favorite performances? I know you talked about Brad Pitt and Snatch. What are some of your favorite performances that you've seen in movies from an actor or actress that have stuck with you, that have helped make those movies replayable?
I mean, you can. See, the problem is that I feel like a lot of movies, like these roles are written exactly for these people. It's hard to really swap people.
Okay, but at the same time, though, but at the same time, to your point, yeah, great roles have been written, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, the performance in what you saw when you saw the movie is what put it over the top. So, what are some of those performances?
Easily, I mean, I would easily put Edward Norton in there. Fight Club. Okay, yeah, Fight Club. Okay, yeah.
American History X, no, yeah, maybe.
That was a good movie. Like. Yeah.
Given what it was about.
Exactly, right. but if you watch it all the way through, you see that this is a dude that was like really racist and things like that, and he sold it very well in the beginning, but then going into prison and becoming reformed, he wasn't that person when he got out. He was beating the shit out of his own family and stuff for racist stuff that they were saying and doing. So and that was a really good role. But yeah, I mean Edward Norton I'll give them both of them, those are really well put together movies. But yeah, that one, I know we were talking earlier about Heath Ledger, right? Just like that in The Dark Knight,
And for the video audience out there, man, I purposely chose The Dark Knight to kind of be the backdrop for the video audience. Definitely check us out on the official Champions Material channel on YouTube.
Because that can easily be argued, right? In regards that he's the greatest Joker of all time. It can be argued.
Quick digression. Is Heath Ledger's performance as Joker in The Dark Knight your greatest Joker performance of all time? We're going to just say live action. We're not going to talk about John DiMaggio and Mark Hamill, most notably as far as animated, but just live action, right? The Jack Nicholsons, the Cesar Romero's, right? The now Jared Leto.
I mean, so like,
because to me, it's a no. It's not even a conversation.
So you're right. It is going to be one of the best because he had that whole psychotic.
But is it the greatest Joker performance you've ever seen on a live action movie?
I would say so.
Okay.
Now the movie, the Joker that came out, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
he got an Oscar as well.
Yeah. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is a great actor, and I mean, he sold the part very well, and it gave you a really good understanding of why the Joker was the way he was, right? The whole backstory, and his performance really sold that. You could visually see, his depression that he was going through. And given, I feel like the movie was more so focused around mental health awareness, which I get is still an important thing, but
Absolutely. Always, for
but
sure.
all in all, yeah, no, but when Heath Ledger stepped into that role, that was much different than anything we had seen before, as far as a villain in general, almost from that whole psychotic sense where he just didn't care, even if he were his own man. He didn't care. He would kill anybody just to show how tough he was or whatever. But yeah, I mean that's another really good role. Gosh, making it tough because my problem is
You're on Champions material, man.
the problem
You
is that I'm so
You
bad
the
at
tone
names.
setter. You knew this.
Like I can visualize it and be like, oh yeah, but what's that person's name? Shit, what's the name of the movie?
Or even just the character from the movie.
Yeah,
And
I'm trying to remember. But yeah, I mean, there's, but also like, what's weird is if you haven't noticed, like a lot of the movies we're naming are all 20 years plus in age. So and that's the thing is like I want to give some type of credibility to something more recent.
Okay.
Whereas yeah, like that role face, like kind of thing you saw about Scarlett Johansson in the MCU, it's something recent and
Right.
Keanu Reeves is that kind of fit randomly for him, right? John Wick, because I don't think he was the original casting for it. Which actually, think about it, he's actually pretty versatile. Also, he's done drama, he's done comedy, he's done action. And he's always remained a success for the most part. Given I think he's more of a niche crowd that people more straight towards.
Well, you know what? And I'll go first, and I'm gonna let you put your, put
Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, my guy,
Benicio del Toro.
Because some suspects, baby.
I was thinking of something more recently, and Sicario.
Okay.
You've seen the first Sicario.
Yes.
The second one, I didn't think was nearly as good as the first.
Okay.
But but like, you watch the first one where you're going through this whole where you think he's there helping the FBI or whoever it is, the federal government, and then later you learn that they're just using him. He's an actual hitman from Mexico, and they're using him to get close to, and that's just and they're just getting him close to so he can do all the work for them, and then they whip their hands clean. But that was like a really good role for him that in that movie. It was something really different. So yeah, that.
So I'm gonna tell you right now where I'm going with this.
Okay. Let me see.
Top four. I'm not going to even go actor or actress because that is impossible.
Okay.
To nail down. I'm not going unless you
Mount Rushmore, I'm assuming.
Okay. So your Mount Rushmore of movies, not actor and actress. We'll save that for the next time. Your Mount Rushmore, and you're going off the dome. And obviously you can come back to this, but I'm gonna go ahead and give you mine.
Go ahead.
Because I don't feel like I can ask that type of question and not, as the host, throw mine out. So I've already mentioned, suspense has already been killed, that my number one is Usual Suspects.
Yep.
It is my favorite movie of all time, and I have not seen anything that made me even so much as think about taking that off the list. It's the Jordan of movies as far as I'm concerned. Number two, and I hinted at this earlier, and I'll go ahead and highlight it now. Belly. And here's the thing.
I love Belly.
DMX.
Fucking T-Boz. She pulled a little 22 out on Method Man when he was just sitting in her living room. Remember this?
The vibe, the scene, hype, did his damn thing. DMX. Here's the reality of the situation. DMX is being DMX.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And they just said, look, this is your name in this movie. Just be your damn self. Tarl Hicks, highly underrated Chocolate Thing. Loved her as well in there. Soundtrack. And one of the things that we haven't touched on is the importance of having a dope soundtrack to your movie. The Boys in the Hood soundtrack is just as dope to me as the movie. Friday had a great soundtrack. We've had some great soundtracks throughout the years tied to movies. So I've got Usual Suspects, Belly, number three, my all-time comedy, and it hasn't been surpassed, Friday. And one thing for me, with all my movies, and I'll get to my number four in a moment, One thing for me about all the movies I'm going to mention, yeah, they're all older and they've all aged well. And I can watch them either start to finish. It don't matter how many times I sit and watch them, I can still get something from them. And I can either watch them start to finish or I can come in at any given scene and whatever I'm doing, I can stop for 15 minutes. So if I come in on Friday and Big Worm, like everybody's going out there and I hear, you fight with thieves, scared to get your ass whooped, right? Or that, or don't go in there for 35, 45 minutes. At any part of that movie, I can stop and be like, all right, put everything else down. I'm gonna watch this. Yeah, that's a common thing. Usual Suspects, Belly, Friday, and number four for me personally,
Okay.
Godfather Part Two.
Okay.
And I know that you're not a fan of long ass movies. That was pretty much it gave you a flashback to the young Vito, and it was so hard. And shout out to Robert De Niro, one of my all-time, actors.
Yeah.
Versatile, one of the great actors to ever do it. I think up until Dark Knight with Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix with Joker, that was the only other example. Somebody fact check me if I'm wrong. Craig, fact check me if I'm wrong. That's the only other example where an actor got an Academy Award for playing the same character. So Marlon Brando, one of the greatest on-screen performances we ever seen in the first Godfather.
Yep.
To have to follow that up. So not only was it one of the great on-screen performances of all time, one of the great movies of all time, and you follow that up with Part Two, Francis Ford Coppola, where you're telling the story of Vito and how he rose, and then I'll go ahead and say this. So, Robert De Niro, great performance as young Vito, which was hard to do considering that you have to follow Marlon Brando as older Vito.
Yeah.
But to me, the greatest performance I've ever seen by an actor or actress in any movie, Al Pacino in Godfather 2. More so than Godfather 1. Because in Godfather 2, you saw a guy, okay, in Godfather 1, you could root for Michael. You saw that he was trying to step away and be his own person, trying to figure out, who he wants to be beyond the family business, right? The air quotes family business. But then after what happens, to his dad shot near death.
Yep.
He comes back and he makes the choice to come in.
Yep.
But there were parts of Michael that you could root for in the first one, right? Pretty straightforward performance as he slowly transitioned.
Yep.
Throughout Godfather Part 2, the things that he did throughout as far as the way that he could read people, Frank Fantangelo, when his house got shot up. My home! In my bedroom where my wife sleeps.
Yeah.
That shit. Where when you watch the same movie multiple times, you're picking up something new every time. So the first time I watched it, I was convinced that he felt like Frankie set him up. And then I watched it again and realized he doesn't think Frankie's setting him up. He's making sure that Frankie didn't set him up. Because based on how Frankie reacts. Fredo, the joint that they did in Cuba, when they was in Cuba and they were having that scene, that was the first time we really saw them together in that way. And the first time I watched it, I'm thinking, okay, he has no idea, at least at that time, that Fredo was actually the one that set him up. You broke my heart, Fredo. That came later.
Yep.
And then I watched it a couple of times again, because again, we talk about a replayable. I can sit there and watch that movie anytime it comes on. Almost any scene is going to grab me.
Gotcha.
And then I realized, wait a minute, time out. He knows, even when they're in Havana, that Fredo, he doesn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
But he knows. And when you look at like how he's looking at him, how he's talking to him, and how he's like basically baiting him. And I'm going, he knows. And he's morphing throughout. When Connie, their sister, after their mother dies, begging Mike, forgive Fredo. He's got a good heart. He doesn't know any better. And I'm like, okay, he's gonna forgive him. And then he hugs Fredo. And he looks up at his bodyguard. I think his name is Near. And he just gives him that look. Non-verbal acting as much as verbal acting.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna bring him close to me, but you know what we have to do. He betrayed me. It's got to be done. And I'm like, damn, he can't do that. And how he, in those two movies, how he transitioned from somebody that, frankly, was like any other person just trying to figure themselves out, but to stay away from things that they thought was bad, and how you rooted for him and how you viewed him from the start. And then what he had turned into by the end, when he's literally, what did he say to Tom Hagen? I don't need to wipe out everybody. Use my enemies. And he was even willing to go all the way up to his brother. And just that complete transition into somebody who's basically, and here's the thing, I realized at the very end of, and I know I'm kind of going long, but fuck it, I don't care. It's my favorite performance.
I got you.
At the
Passionate.
very
I like
end, yeah, at the very end of Godfather 2,
Yeah.
the most, like, one of the most passionate or most scenes, replayable scenes that have stuck with me is when he's sitting there at the table when they do the flashback and everybody's still alive. Sonny, everybody's still alive. And he goes, after playing that guy all the way through Godfather Part 2, then he goes back to the guy that was Mike from Godfather 1. Not Michael, not Don Michael, but Mike.
Yep.
And he's sitting there at the table and all those memories. And for him to be able to go all the way back to that after playing this mentally, just, you know what I'm saying? Just sick, you know, and then he's sitting there and he's by himself after they go to surprise Vito for his birthday. And he's sitting there by himself. And I'm like, you know how he can do this? Because he's always been alone.
That makes sense.
You have no connection. So you can turn into this type of individual when you've never really had a connection with anybody. And that performance, start to finish, just stuck with me. So those four.
Okay.
But for completely different reasons.
Okay.
Usual Suspects, Belly, Friday.
Gotcha.
Godfather Part 2.
Okay.
So I went in and you had time. So Craig, you up.
Oh, it's easy. I don't even
What
need time.
are
These
your
are just my all-time
four
favorite
movies
right?
of all time?
So we already discussed the one Snitch, right?
Okay.
And I swear I'm about to Google the director's name because he's getting on my skin.
Guy Ritchie.
Thank you. Richard kept coming. It's not Richard. Anything Guy Ritchie makes, I'm gonna watch. Okay. It doesn't matter. I love all his movies. Anyway, Slack 2 Smoking Barrel, another great one. All right, anyway, sorry. Snatch. Okay. Easily. We already talked about that. All right. Second one is a movie called The Rock.
The Rock.
Yep. Hey, Shawn Connery, Nick Cage.
Okay.
What's crazy is even though they were good actors, I still feel like Ed Harris was the best one because Ed Harris was the villain, right? He was the main colonel there that was in charge of the warheads, and you know. But yes, that one was a great movie. I love that movie, and that was really long. I've watched that movie so many times over. But yeah, so you had The Rock, you had Snatch. One that I guarantee you never heard of, but it's one of my favorites. I don't know why, but it's just a comedy. Hear no evil, see no evil.
Hear no evil, see no, man. You dropping some jewels over there, man. Shit that I've either barely heard of or I've never watched.
I'm a big fan of old Richard Pryor movies.
Okay.
But Hear no evil, see no evil was him again. Him and Gene Wilder, you know, in the Communities. Okay, a great movie. One's deaf, one's blind. Richard Pryor's blind, Gene Wilder's deaf. Okay. And they get framed for robbing a bank, and it's just great. Yeah. Right. I can name plenty of other Richard Moving. You know, that we already talked about Stir Crazy. I love Richard Pryor movies. But anyway, those two, and then my last one, at least you might agree with, is simply Goodfellas. I love Goodfellas. Okay. Goodfellas, you know, especially when towards the end when he's working to be Joe Pesci become a made man, and then they call him up to the office,
put him down,
and he opened that door, nobody was there. He knew exactly what was happening at that point.
I think they kind of had the little sound right before the shot. He's like he knew.
Yeah.
And there was nothing he can do.
Exactly. But Goodfellas I love that movie. It's one of my classics. You know. So, you know, you go right back to Robert De Niro on that. But how was that? Robert De Niro's heyday was like right down the line. He had Casino in there, which I love Casino also.
Casino, he had Heat. Untouchables, you brought up Untouchables earlier. I think he was Capone, right?
So there were just a lot of really good movies back then. You know, and he's a really good versatile. And then I know towards the end of his career, he started getting towards comedy. I remember reading or watching something about that where he made the switch. But anyway, yeah, no, those are definitely my four. I mean, there's other ones that I will easily turn on, like guilty pleasures and stuff like that, which I won't admit to right now. So, because people always look at me sideways of my guilty pleasure movies. So why would you even watch that? It's so stupid. I'm like, I don't know why.
Yeah,
just,
you know, whenever it's on, you know what?
I turn it on.
I'm as I get this light, cranked up real quick. Yeah. I'll bite the apple a little bit, and here's one that I'll say is a guilty pleasure. And I'm a grown man. I'm out here. Beavis and Butthead Do America, man. There's absolutely no reason at this point why that movie should move for me with that movie.
But see that
moves for
one,
me, man.
okay. And now since you admit, mine was Dude, Where's My Car?
Dude, where's my car?
With Ashton Kutcher
Oh,
and
shit.
fucking whatchamacallit,
Shit.
Shawn something. Fuck, I can't think of his name. But yeah, I don't know why. It's just a stupid fucking movie, but I'll watch it every single time it's on. It's like I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna turn.
We all have them, man. We all had those movies where it's like, you know what, man, I'm shutting my brain off, and you know, and don't judge me. And if you do, I still don't care. Right? Sorry, not sorry. But now, real quick, and I just want to do this before we wrap, man, because I just can't help it. Since we've talked about some of the greats to ever do it in this field. We've talked about Richard, and who are your personal favorite or your personal best comedians, and you can go by whatever metric that you want. You can say, okay, what they've done in movies, what they've done with stand up, just the pure, just funny as hell factor.
Let's start with controversy.
Okay.
Kings of comedy, they were not kings of comedy.
Ooh.
Well, look at right. Have they aged well at all?
Said is
Bernie Mac may have if he was still here today.
Rest in peace.
You know, and you know the Bernie Mac show was phenomenal. Right. Very well put together. I think he probably would have had the best career out of all of them.
Okay.
Cedric's movie career was bomb. But you know, you have
funny, but he just never quite translated on the movie side. I gotta admit. Exactly. Johnson Family Vacation being the closest, and trust me, that's not a classic by anybody's standards.
And I mean, Steve Harvey's his show flopped as well. And
damn good radio show. He loves to host his
it's Family Feud, you know. But you know what? Hey, he's making a living. I'm not gonna take him from that. Right. You know. Heard his daughter was
just saying.
I don't know.
Talk to Michael B. He'll let you know.
Oh, is it? Okay, Michael B. Jordan. All right, cool. All right, so you had that Chappelle. He's one of the. I think he's going to be one of the legends. Okay. Obviously. Okay. Richard Pryor, always. I enjoy Richard Pryor from all aspects of his career. Gosh, who are some other people? Why am I drawing a blank?
For me, yeah. Why you? Here's. I'm just going.
Dude from the '70s.
Red Fox.
Don't get me wrong. I love that show. Okay. I love that show. That's a guilty pleasure show of mine. Actually, I will always turn it on whenever it's on. Red Fox and that.
You know what? Hey, we're not.
I'm googling. I'm sorry.
Hey, it's 2021. It's called technology, right?
It is. It's on the tip of my tongue. And you know what? When we were talking earlier, it was in my head, and then we started thinking about.
So this was a guy that was like,
he's a big time. Yeah. You got everybody listening probably already like yelling his name at me, but
okay, so for me,
George Carlin. Thank you. George Carlin.
Yes. Okay. Carlin definitely. Okay.
Yeah, given his stuff wouldn't stand in today because you know he was that very risque type of comedian. But yes, George Carlin all day. I remember having a high school teacher of mine back in the day. We would watch a segment of his in class. You know, interesting. But yeah, those. How many was that? 3 or 4?
That's 3. So you said 4. Yeah. So so you got one more. So for me,
Chris Rock.
You took him.
I had to beat you to it. I don't want you to be shy. Chris Rock.
Goddamn, you took him. So for me, in this order, and it used to be Eddie, Richard, Dave Chappelle, and Chris Rock. Those are still my 4.
Yep.
Honorable mention. Again, we talked about sort of guilty pleasure. Jerry Seinfeld. I've always enjoyed his quirky.
His show. I mean, Seinfeld was a phenomenal show. Right. Again, it's a show about nothing, right?
And even comedians driving cars, getting coffee. I love that.
It's well put together. You know, it's classy. You know, he doesn't try to like dig for jokes and try to make them. And if they come up naturally. Which is
the most natural comedian of all time. But I've always those have been my 4. And that order that I mentioned before was pretty much it. And then Sticks and Stones. Okay. I ranked that. I put that right above. So for me, the 4 are Chappelle. Now, post Sticks and Stones, and for him to be able to be one of the greatest, to me, it's now Chappelle, Eddie, Richard, Rock. And the irony is that my top 4 favorite specials of all time, and again, we talked about the Replayables theme in gaming, we brought it over to movies. Dave Chappelle, Sticks and Stones. Fairly recent. I know good damn well 20 years from now, I'll still be laughing my ass off. Chris Rock, Bring the Pain. You think anybody? You think anybody with Wanda's?
Good,
You think anybody with Wanda's got fucking lactose intolerance? Like that shit.
I went to, yeah, because like when you said Chicago 6, yeah, good. I like Killing Them Softly. Personally.
Yeah, you know what?
Killing Them
Yeah,
Softly
yeah,
was
the
a
joint he did
classic.
in DC. You know, some classics. So
yeah, but you know, but if you notice though, like, and obviously people will probably argue that why we didn't put Kevin Hart in our conversation. Don't get me wrong.
Come on, man.
Kevin Hart is funny, but in certain situations, I've learned, and obviously people get upset. It is what it is. I don't care. But reason why he's funny for the most part is because he does a lot of hand movements, right?
Physical comedy.
It's physical, yeah. So if he's not doing that, and like if you're just hearing like the audio, it's like, okay, he's kind of funny, but it's the whole performance that you really have to catch with him.
I call it Carrieism after Jim Carrey. I thought he was probably the greatest physical comedian that I've ever seen, as far as just. I think he's a genius in that space. I don't think if Jim Carrey stood still and had a mic and just was doing stand up, I don't think I'm like laughing as much. But just the physical comedy was ridiculous. But so for me, Chappelle, Sticks and Stones. I've got Chris Rock, Bring the Pain. I've got Richard Pryor live in concert.
Okay.
And I've got Eddie Murphy Raw. And those are my four favorite stand-ups to me that I've seen. Gotcha. And it was interesting that you brought up Hart, and I'm glad you did. There are two Kevin Harts. We talked to me.
Yep.
There is Kevin Hart up to Laugh at My Pain.
Yep.
I got to check it into savings. It may take 2 or 3 business days unless you got a card. You got to wipe it off. That Kevin Hart. And then there's Post, Laugh at My Pain. And here's the thing. He was on the come up and he was on the cusp of superstardom with Killing Them Softly and the other ones that he had done previous to Laugh at My Pain. Yep. And then Laugh at My Pain made him a superstar. That's when you started seeing Kevin everywhere. Laugh Out Loud. Work. What's the joint he does when he sits in ice and talks to people?
Oh, yeah, Cold as Ice.
Cold as Ice. Cold as Balls. Cold as Balls. All kinds of
What the Fit and all that stuff. Yeah,
still haven't, in my opinion, you talked about this before with Said and the Kings of Comedy people. He still hasn't had a great movie to me.
No, he can't carry a movie by himself.
He can't as the carrier. Jumanji, the first one, okay, like he's had a couple.
But he had a good supporting cast, and that was about The Rock, right? That's why he was the main picture on the cover.
Absolutely. So, and I think,
but don't get me wrong, though.
And he's still funny, right? Well, but Kevin Hart, like, okay, my stomach hurt. I need to pause this for a minute. Funny, stopped at Laugh at My Pain. Yeah. I'm smiling and laughing occasionally was everything on, and that's put it this way. Eddie is Eddie. Eddie can be funny if he's doing physical comedy or if he's just sitting there at any given time. Eddie can be funny without even trying. Like you said, we talking about with Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah. If it happens within the flow, it's funny and you laugh. Yeah. Richard, it's not even go there, right? So everybody that I mentioned, Dave Chappelle could just walk in and say, "Shit slices," and I'm just sitting here just laughing for no reason, right? Kevin is more physical, and then Kevin, I think, as the bigger he got and the more interest that he's developed, and again, shout out to him because he's out here killing it, and credit to him for giving the Tiffany Haddishes of the world and others opportunity to have their platform. So shout out to Kevin. Well, I mean, we're talking but strictly within the realm.
But let's just clarify something. Yeah. Me and you are both raised in the Philly area. We're both came from that area. So no matter what, we're gonna support everything from Philly. It's just in our nature. It doesn't matter. Just like the team. Well, me as far as the town, about you. But regardless of how bad the teams are, I'm still gonna support them. It's Philly in the end. That's where I've spent the first 20 plus years of my life.
Yes.
So Kevin Hart, although he's not one of my favorites, he's still good, and he's from Philly, so I'm gonna always support. I'm always gonna watch his specials just to give him views. But the last special he had was pretty good. I'm not gonna take that from him.
Yeah.
The one he did November.
When he was literally in his own basement, which I was like, damn, okay, just we coming up in the world. But probably his best one, arguably, since Laugh at My Pain.
Yep.
And I sat down, and my expectations sitting down were closer to what my expectations have been from him in the better part of the past decade.
Yep.
I didn't sit down with Laugh at My Pain and Killing Them Softly and Grown Little Man. I didn't sit down with those expectations. I sat down saying, okay, I know I get a laugh or two. You know what I mean? It can kind of play in the background, and then it turned out to be pretty funny. So, man, just wanted to just tap into that real quick.
That's
And
fine. We can talk forever, you know that. So
absolutely, man. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, that is Craig Darrow. I am Shawn Vaughn. This is Champions Material, Replayables, movies, right? What makes a movie replayable to you? We told you what makes a movie replayable to us. Great scripts, great direction, great story, and above all, at least in my view, great performances by actors and actresses. So hopefully you all had as much fun listening to this as we did recording this. As always, you can catch find Champions Material on Facebook, Twitter, IG, on the official Champions Material YouTube channel. We post our videos there. This one will be there as well.
yep.
So definitely, thanks for the support. Holla at me, all right? And never forget, whoever you want to be and whatever you want to be, always be the champion of it. That's Champions Material. Stay tuned. We'll be back sooner than later with our next episode. But for now, myself, Craig Darrow, first ever guest, we're done.